Have you ever felt like pain didn't just break you, but reshaped you? Like after something hurt deeply, a heartbreak, a betrayal, a disappointment, you never quite went back to being the same person again? Psychologists say that pain doesn't only live in our memories, it rewires the way we think, feel, and connect with the world. And most of the time, those changes happen so quietly, you don't even notice them until you look back and realize you've become someone entirely new. In this video, we'll explore 9 ways pain quietly changes your personality, backed by psychological insight and emotional understanding. You might recognize yourself in more of these than you expect. 1. You become more emotionally guarded. When you've been hurt before, your mind learns to associate vulnerability with danger. According to emotional conditioning theory, we start to build invisible walls to protect ourselves from potential harm. You might find it harder to open up, even to people who mean well. You hesitate before trusting, question kindness, and often replay moments to make sure you're not being naive again. It's not that you've stopped caring. You've just learned that not everyone deserves access to your softest parts. This emotional guardedness can feel lonely, but it's your mind's way of creating safety after chaos. Over time, with healing, those walls can become doors again, carefully opened, one by one. 2. You value depth over closeness. Pain changes the way you see connection. You stop craving crowds and start craving meaning. Surface-level friendships and conversations about nothing no longer satisfy you. You'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who don't see you. Research in social psychology shows that after emotional trauma, many people develop a selective attachment pattern. That means your heart becomes pickier. Not because you're arrogant, but because you've experienced what fake closeness feels like. Pain sharpens your intuition. You start listening more to energy than to words. You no longer chase connections that drain you. You protect the ones that heal you. 3. You learn emotional minimalism. Before pain, you might have given too much attention, effort, explanations. But pain teaches you that love and kindness shouldn't feel like survival. You begin to simplify the way you show emotion. You stop overgiving, oversharing, and over-apologizing. Psychologists call this emotional regulation through restraint. It's a quiet maturity, the ability to express care without losing yourself in it. You stop proving your worth because you realize real love never asks you to. It's not that you've become colder. You've just learned to move with intention instead of impulse. 4. You develop a sense of hyper-awareness. When you've experienced betrayal, loss, or neglect, your brain becomes wired to scan for danger. You start noticing things others overlook, small changes in tone, subtle shifts in energy, the quiet red flags behind someone's smile. Neuroscience calls this hypervigilance. It's your mind trying to prevent the same pain from happening again. But here's the paradox. The more you try to avoid pain, the more exhausted your heart becomes. You might find yourself overthinking or analyzing too much, trying to predict every possible outcome. It's your mind saying, I can't survive another heartbreak. Learning to calm that instinct is part of healing. Realizing that not everyone you meet will repeat the hurt you've known. 5. You stop believing in permanence. One of pain's cruelest lessons is impermanence. People you thought would never leave, do. Moments you thought would last forever, fade. After enough loss, you begin to internalize the truth. Nothing truly stays the same. This realization changes you. You start holding on more loosely, loving more cautiously, preparing yourself emotionally for endings before they arrive. Existential psychologists describe this as post-traumatic awareness of transience, a deeper understanding that life is constantly shifting. While it can make you wary, it also teaches acceptance. You start appreciating people while they're here, instead of assuming they'll always be. 6. You become more empathetic. But quieter pain deepens your ability to understand others. You start sensing what others feel, because you've felt it too. You recognize sadness behind laughter, exhaustion behind smiles, silence behind anger. But empathy doesn't always look like words. Sometimes it's just being present, listening without fixing, sitting beside someone in their darkness because you remember your own. According to clinical psychology, many people who have faced emotional pain develop higher levels of effective empathy, a more instinctive form of understanding emotion. But you also learn to conserve your energy. You stop trying to save everyone, realizing that some people don't want saving, they want understanding. Pain teaches compassion, but it also teaches boundaries. 7. You romanticize solitude. Pain introduces you to yourself. At first, solitude feels like punishment. The quiet feels heavy, the silence too loud. But with time, something changes. You begin to enjoy your own company. You find meaning in simple moments, a cup of tea, a long walk, the sound of rain. You realize peace doesn't come from being surrounded by people. It comes from being at peace within yourself. Philosophically, this is known as existential self-integration, when solitude stops being loneliness and starts becoming self-discovery. You start learning that your worth doesn't depend on how many people love you, but how deeply you love yourself. And when you finally make peace with your own presence, solitude becomes your sanctuary, not your sentence. 8. You build emotional independence. Pain teaches you that no one is coming to save you, and strangely, that realization frees you. You stop waiting for closure, for apologies, for explanations. You start giving those things to yourself. You become emotionally self-sufficient. You comfort yourself when you're sad. You celebrate yourself when no one notices. You begin to realize that depending on others for your emotional survival keeps you in cycles of disappointment. Psychologically, this is called internal locus of control, the belief that your healing comes from within. You still want connection, but you no longer depend on it to feel complete. That's when your peace becomes unshakable, because it's no longer in anyone else's hands. 9. You transform pain into purpose. When you've been through enough hurt, you begin to see life differently. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What did this teach me?" You realize your pain wasn't random. It was a curriculum psychologists call this post-traumatic growth, when suffering leads to greater resilience, wisdom, and meaning. You begin to use your experiences to help others. You speak with more compassion, act with more intention, and live with more awareness. The scars don't disappear, but they stop defining you. They become reminders of who you've become, not what you've lost. And that's the quiet beauty of growth. It happens when you stop running from your pain and start learning from it. The aftermath. Who you become. After pain. Pain doesn't just change your story, it changes your lens. You start seeing life through clarity instead of innocence. You start valuing peace over popularity, depth over drama, truth over comfort. You no longer chase what hurts, because you've learned that love isn't supposed to burn. You no longer fear endings, because you know every loss creates space for something more aligned. And one day, without realizing it, you wake up calmer. You react less. You forgive faster. You expect less. You finally understand that peace isn't something you find. It's something you build after pain has taught you how to protect it. Pain doesn't just change your personality. It matures your soul. It strips away the unnecessary, leaving behind a version of you that's quieter, wiser, and infinitely more real. So if you've noticed you're not the same person you once were, don't mourn that change. You didn't lose yourself. You evolved. And that's what pain was always trying to do. Not destroy you, but prepare you for a peace that only healed people can hold. Pain changes you quietly. But the question is, how will you use that change? You can let it make you bitter, or you can let it make you deeper. You can close off to love, or you can learn how to love without losing yourself. Growth doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means understanding why it needed to. If this video resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. Which of these changes have you noticed in yourself lately? Comment your thoughts below. Your story might help someone who's silently healing right now. And if you want to keep understanding the psychology of emotions, healing, and human behavior, subscribe to Soul Real, where every video helps you see pain not as an ending, but as evolution. Because even your deepest wounds can become the map back to yourself.